Recording in progress. I am about 4 years and exactly 2 kids into being a father. And looking back on it, it was one of the most difficult decisions that I have ever made in my life. And I think it is one of the most difficult decisions that a person can make. And so, being 4 years, almost 4 years into this, I have perspective on what being a father is like, but I'm still near enough to that decision to remember what that decision was like. Some people, they know they want kids. They are sure of it.
I know I want kids, and I'm sure of it.
That was not me. Because what a decision it is. You are deciding whether or not you'd like to take on this 18-year project with another person who you have a 50% likelihood of staying with. And this 18-year project is going to cost you around $350,000 per child. You have no idea how it's going to go in advance. You can't possibly know how it's going to go in advance. And if you don't like it and it's not what you thought it would be, there's no way to go back. And by the way, that 18-year estimate, that is a bare minimum. On the other hand, do you want to miss out on what many people consider to be the most incredible experience of their life, the thing that has given their life an intense sense of meaning and purpose, and to experience a love that you have never experienced before? Because when you talk to most parents, they tell you it's the best thing that they've ever done. And I remember talking to my wife's cousin about this, and we were discussing, whether or not he would have liked to have had more kids. He has 3 kids, and they're grown now. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I absolutely would have liked to have had more kids." And I was like, "Oh, why is that?" And he goes, "The love." And I didn't get that answer then, but I do now. The decision about whether or not to have kids was a particularly difficult one for me, clearly. And so I thought I'd offer my perspective, not to convince you, not to win you over to, a certain way of thinking, but rather to offer a perspective, one that I wish I had had in this when I was trying to make this decision. Not that I didn't have many perspectives, because parents will give you, definitely they will give you their perspective. I remember asking some of the dads in my life about this decision. And the reviews were mixed. One of the guys said, "Oh, it's the best thing you'll ever do." One of the guys said, "I kind of regret having kids." One of the guys said, "It's one of the greatest sources of joy in my life." Another guy said, "Enjoy all the bed-related activities that you can now." The most frustrating advice I would get is when I would ask, how do you possibly fit a child into your already full life that's full of things and people and work and such? And I remember everybody said the same thing. "Oh, you'll figure it out." And I remember thinking, okay, but how? How do you figure it out? The answers did not clarify very much, and I didn't find them to be all that helpful. I think one of the reasons is because there are 2 different kinds of experience that people were drawing on when they gave this answer. One is lived experience, which is you have lived it, and one is present experience, where you are presently living it. I think ultimately what would have been most helpful is a framework. So not necessarily a yes or a no, or here's what I think you should do, but rather a framework in which I could think about this question. And so that's what I want to offer. I want to offer a framework. This framework is one that I think is brilliant. I wish I had come across it when I was trying to decide whether or not to have kids. I think it would have been super helpful. It was brought to my attention after reading a book called Wicked Problems, and in it, the author, what's his name? Guru Madhavan, what a name. A systems engineer, he uses this thought experiment presented by L.A. Paul. And he describes what are known as vampire problems. Vampire problems. If you were offered a chance to become a vampire, painlessly, and without inflicting pain on others, gaining incredible superpowers in exchange for relinquishing your human existence, with all your friends having made the leap and loving it, would you do it? Paul then continues. The trouble is, in this situation, how could you possibly make an informed choice? For after all, you cannot know what it is like to be a vampire until you are one. And if you can't know what it is like to be a vampire without becoming one, you can't compare the character of the lived experience of what it is like to be you, right now, a mere human, to the character of the lived experience of what it would be like to be a vampire. This means that if you want to make this choice by considering what you want your lived experience to be like in the future, you can't do it rationally. At least you can't do it by weighing the competing options concerning what it would be like and choosing on that basis. And it seems awfully suspect to rely solely on the testimony of your vampire friends to make your choice because, after all, they aren't human anymore, so their preferences are the ones vampires have, not the ones humans have. Which I thought was such a brilliant summation of the problem, because that is exactly what I was running into, is all these fathers who talk about how great fatherhood is, and it's like, yeah, of course you'd say that. You're a father. I need an unbiased opinion. But in this realm, unbiased opinions don't really exist. They can't exist. Of all of life's decisions, I think that's why deciding whether or not to have kids is one of the most difficult, because you can't possibly know what it's like until you've actually done it, and then by the time you've done it, it is then irreversible and too late to go back. Other big decisions are difficult to undo or difficult to unravel, but you could move back to wherever you moved from. You could get a divorce. You could sell the house. When you become a parent, it is essentially irreversible. I mean, I guess you could give your kid up for adoption, but that's not really what we're talking about here. So if this decision seems like an impossible one, it's because it is. You can't possibly reason or logic your way into this problem, because in order to have the lived experience of being a parent, to be able to make that decision, you then have to become a parent, which, of course, by then it's too late. This is the point that I hope to drive home. When I, pre-kid Taylor, there he is, look at him, so well-rested, so young, so youthful, was imagining what it would be like to have kids. Pre-kid Taylor was thinking, what would it be like for me, pre-kid Taylor, to have kids? How would I fit kids into my pre-kid Taylor's life? What I wish I knew is that once I became a parent, I would become a fundamentally different person. My wants would change, my desires would change, my personality would change, that I would no longer be pre-kid Taylor. To outsiders, I looked the same. To my mirror, I looked the same. But the internal and lived experience of my life was profoundly different from when I was pre-kid Taylor, because I was not pre-kid Taylor anymore. I was parent Taylor, because I had a kid. And he is a different guy. A guy I happen to like better. To quote L.A. Paul again, you know that undergoing the experience will change what it is like for you to live your life, and perhaps even change what it is like to be you, deeply and fundamentally. Except I didn't know that. Pre-kid Taylor thought if I work at this long enough, if I think about this long enough, if I use logic well enough, I will finally know what I'm supposed to do. I will reach a decision that will feel completely right, and I'll feel 100% confident in that decision. But of course it doesn't, and it cannot work like that. You cannot logic your way out of an emotional problem. So where does this leave us? Because if I was pre-kid Taylor watching this video right now, I'd be like, okay, where does that leave us? What am I supposed to do? To quote Paul one more time, I'll argue that, in the end, the best response to this situation is to choose based on whether we want to discover who we'll become. I think that is the most helpful way to think about it. I think that is the framework to use. Do you want to have an experience that will grow you, that will challenge you, that will change you, that will deeply affect you? Do you want to see who you will become under those circumstances? Because having kids will absolutely do that. Do you want to open yourself up to an incredible love that you have never felt before? And there I go, trying to convince you. Because this experience for me has been so incredibly challenging, but also so rewarding, and I love it way more than I thought I would. But of course, a vampire would say that. One more helpful frame, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So this is an analogy that I came up with when I was trying to explain the experience of being a parent to non-parents. Imagine gaining the ability to see a brand new color. So you go about your life, and every day you are seeing that new color in different places, and it is the most iridescent, beautiful color that you've ever seen. Now, you are tasked with describing this color to a friend who has never seen this color before. How do you go about describing a color to someone who has never seen that color? If someone was unable to see the color green, how could you describe to someone what green is? It's just green. It, of course, has to be experienced. You can describe the color green all day long. It's trees, it's ferns, it's grass. It's green. But at the end of the day, the color green, it has to be something that is experienced. As someone who can experience and who can see the color green, of course I'm an advocate that everybody should see green. I mean, gosh, what would life be like if you couldn't see green? It would be so much less. But of course, to those who can't see the color green, they don't really understand what it is that they're missing out on. So it's kind of like that. If you choose to become a father, if you choose to become a parent, you get to see these colors that you've never seen before, experience these emotions and these feelings that you've never felt before, and it's incredible, right? And you want to share it with everybody because it's so incredible, and you think everybody should do it. But for the people that don't decide, or decide not to, they decide they don't care so much about seeing those colors, they don't really know what they're missing out on because, again, they can't see what it is that they can't see, if that makes sense. Okay, how to wrap this up. So I guess I'd encourage you to sit with that question. If you're on the fence, if you are on that fence of, do I become a parent or not? Do I want to become a father? That would be my encouragement, is sit with that question of whether or not you'd like to see who you will become under those circumstances. I think sitting with that question is better than all the advice out there. Well-meaning advice from people that care about you. Really sitting with that question and discussing it, of course, with your partner and deciding whether or not you'd like to see who you'd become under those circumstances. And that's it. I sincerely wish you the best of luck. This is a tough decision. Trust yourself. You'll be just fine.